Welcome to Card Player TV's Online Zone. I'm Julio Rodriguez, and I'm joined on the phone by Nick, who plays as FU15 online. How are you doing, Nick?
I'm doing very well, sir. How are you?
Pretty good. Now, Nick, you are currently in 4th place in our Online Player of the Year race, and you're doing it in an interesting way, very much like Steve Gross did last year, where it's a lot of consistent, decent-sized scores without the big Sunday Million, full tilt 750 guarantee win. You've basically been one of the more consistent players in the year.
Yeah, it's actually been going really well. I mean, I've always kind of been hunting and chasing this 100K score or whatever, this major score. And I've in the few years that I've played online, I've never had a score above 70K. But then I've had multiple 50K wins and stuff this year. So yeah, I mean, I'm trying to be consistent, but with the swings of the game, it's tough to maintain it. I hope I can maintain it. I haven't really done anything in the past 2 weeks, so we'll see if I can keep on pace with everyone else.
Do you feel like it's just easier in these smaller fields where the bigger buy-ins? I mean, I know you do well in the big rebuys and the 1K events, and you just recently took down the Wednesday $250,000. Do you find those easier to navigate than the massive big Sunday major fields?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I mean, there's kind of like two schools of thought on this. A lot of people, a lot of the professionals think that the Sunday major fields and these type of fields are easier because there's a lot more dead money. There's a lot of people that aren't making optimal decisions and aren't playing their stack as best they can. So in that regard, there's a lot more places that you can probably get chips. There's a lot more players you can exploit in the bigger fields. But with that said, in those bigger fields, you also have to run really well, and you have to get into many flip situations, and you have to just run well throughout the tournament. And for me, I found it's just really tough to run consistently well all the way down. My deepest finish in the Sunday Million was 14th last year, and I remember I ran really, really well to get there. And then, it's just so hard to just consistently run. Whereas in the smaller fields, fields with probably between 300 and 700, 800 players, even 1,000 sometimes, although they're more stacked in terms of player, the talent, the average talent level in the field. If you really study the game and you really know what's going on, you know what a lot of the best players are doing, and you're kind of accustomed and used to playing them and knowing how they play, and you probably obviously have to get in less. You're forced to get in less coin flip situations or forced situations where both players have even equity and the money has to go in. So that's why I've had more success, I think, in the smaller fields.
Now I want to continue on that topic because I wonder, do these top online players, do they play differently depending on what tournament they're in? If you're in the Sunday Million, do you have to dumb down your game a little bit as opposed to when you're in the $200 rebuy and you're facing just, great player after great player?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, to be honest, I'd say that, the most important thing about poker is just dealing with each situation specifically as it comes along, and obviously knowing your array of moves and, different lines that you can take in a hand, but really just approaching each hand as a separate situation, as a separate line of thought, and thinking, okay, if I'm at a Sunday Million table with a lot of players that are unknown, a lot of players from all different parts of the world, and players that maybe don't play near as high a volume as I do, you just have to adapt and kind of think, okay, what are they doing and why are they doing that? Whereas if I'm sitting at a 200 rebuy table with a stacked field with guys that play several days a week, and it's obviously they're on top of the game. They know everything that's going on. They know all the little subtleties, the subtle edges, all these, just really ways to maximize value. Obviously to get in their head, you kind of know more so along the lines of what they're thinking, and you kind of have to play in accordance to their thinking. Now, I wouldn't go so far as to say that you play completely different, but I just think you might take an approach to specific hands differently, or play certain hands more conservative or more hands aggressive, depending on who you're playing against.
I can imagine it would be tough not to go into autopilot mode when you're playing so many tables at once.
Yeah, it's tough sometimes. It's really strange. I mean, I always find that it's probably best, to people that are starting and people that are starting tournaments. I always recommend probably 3 to 4 tournaments. I think is the best. because it allows you to, make the most use of your time and play like 3 or 4 good tournaments that you can focus on and not have to, like, your brain being stretched too far. But at the same time, like, if you bust one or you get coolered or something in one, you're not just playing one tournament and then your night's over. You have 3 or 4 opportunities. Now on Sundays, that's the day that everyone kind of flips out. You play an average schedule for a Sunday grinder is high stakes grinder is probably like 15 to 20 tournaments, I'd say, is average. So
throughout the day or at once?
Well, 15, 20 during the day, and a normal schedule would be like to start with the warm up at about 1 o'clock and play all the way through like the 200 rebuy at 9. So you've got 20 tournaments or so starting, 15 to 20 tournaments starting in that 8 hour span. That's pretty a typical day. So really, it's just kind of training your mind and training your thoughts, just to kind of not have to. It's almost like the decisions that you can make already, and you're already so used to making them that when you're playing that many tables, you just kind of already know what's going on. You know what people are doing, and you're so accustomed to it that you can just do it really quickly, and then just move on to all the other tables, all the other action that you have going on.
Now, we mentioned your consistency in the smaller buy-in events. How frustrating is it to, you said your best finish in a Sunday Million was 14th. How frustrating is it to see a guy like Steven Burkholder or Steve Gross this year or Sean Deeb, who just every time they get there, they close it out? Is there a little jealousy ever in the online world?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely jealousy. I mean, I'm like, I usually approach the type where, like, I know there's more tournaments coming, and I know that there's plenty of opportunities. So I think it's very negative to take the approach of like, I wish I would have done that tournament, or wish I would have ran better in that tournament. Yeah, I mean, it can be frustrating, but you'll have plenty more opportunities, and everyone kind of gets their day, and there's plenty more money to be won. So, in any specific tournament, it's tough. Now, if you see a player, that you have consistent history with, that you getting like consistent for tournament, day by day, you get consistent spots with them where like you have even equity, or you might be slightly favored, in multiple spots where they always seem to outrun you, or they always seem to get you. That's probably the times when that frustration is kind of peaks against other players. You're like, oh, this player runs better than me. Like I've met players like at different times they've been like, oh, you run like God against me. Or like you have these different like kind of dynamics and relationships between each individual player, especially between the regulars. So that's kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, G-Bro, he's the guy knows how to close. I mean, that's for sure. Also, guys like Moorman, some of these guys, like, they're really good at closing those big tournaments, and I feel like they've had enough success that money and like those huge scores, like mentally, like they can handle that, and they don't flip out, or they don't really get stressed or like get really too worried about the money, and they just kind of play optimally, and then that kind of allows them to coast to the final table, and then get in some good spots, and press some good edges, and then they end up the first place.
Well, it's about time those guys left some money for everyone else. Now, I know you're going to be playing the World Series pretty heavily this year, but I want to talk about online play. Are you going to continue to battle it out for OPOY?
Oh yeah, for sure. I never thought at the beginning of this year. I never thought that I'd really, starting this year on January 1st, if you would have asked me if I would have been competing for the online play of the year, I'd be like, yeah, right. Like, there's no way. But stuff's gone well, and I've ran pretty well at times, and I think I'm behind like Gripolio and then G-Burrow and Sean Deeb, and I'm sure they'll be grinding, and I'll definitely be grinding like when I'm not playing tournaments. Like, I have my event scheduled, and if I bust like a day one or whatever, like I'll probably be, whenever I'm not in a World Series tournament, I'll pretty much be sticking to my normal like weekly schedule, which is like Sundays and then like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday nights. That's usually my typical tournament schedule. So
cool, man. Well,
yeah.
I definitely wish you the best of luck this summer and throughout the course of the year, catching those 3 guys ahead of you. And I'd like to thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot. And I guess I'll see you in Vegas when you're out there reporting.
All right, man. See you there. I'd like to thank you guys for watching Card Player TV's Online Zone.